Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and President Donald Trump address business leaders from around the world at the US-Saudi Investment Forum in America. The Epstein files bill is heading to Trump's desk after unanimous congressional approval. And an Australian prisoner makes headlines after deciding to sue for his so-called right to eat Vegemite. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has delivered the opening remarks at the US-Saudi Investment Forum alongside President Donald Trump. They both hailed the strong partnership between the two countries, and Trump said the alliance is stronger and more powerful than ever before. Top global figures, including Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Nvidia's founder, are attending that very event. To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue, who is over in Florida, and Dr. Elie Hindy, Chairperson of the Department of Security and Strategic Studies at the American University in the Emirates, who is, of course, right here in the studio with me. So, Dr. Elie, let's start with that investment forum that's been happening today. Some major players there when it comes to the world of business to meet the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Definitely, it is a historical moment. And while I was watching today, two major historical events came to my mind, if you don't mind putting this in context a little bit. The first image is the image of Roosevelt meeting King Abdulaziz in 1945 after World War II, which is referred to today, till today, as the foundation of the Saudi-US special relationship. Back then, it was called the Oil for Protection deal, where a new kingdom in the Middle East was seeking international protection in return of giving up almost all of its oil at the time. And then this dependency continued. The other image I had in mind was the oil embargo of 1973, which brought the oil and that special relationship into the Arab-Israeli conflict, and where Saudi Arabia at the time decided to use oil as a weapon, as a tool, its wealth practically as a tool to pressure Israel and pressure the US to in turn pressure Israel in what's happening in the war. Today, 80 years from the first scene and 52 years from the second scene, we're seeing a completely different Saudi Arabia, a completely different kind of relationship that we have there. First, it is no longer a dependency, neither a US dependency on Saudi oil, nor a Saudi dependency on American protection. We are seeing two partners having huge amounts of common interest in all different fields, as you mentioned. And this is a relationship of partners, of peers, rather of one dependent against the other. Definitely the US is still the superpower, but then we can today speak about Saudi Arabia as a major international player, as a key component of a key partner in this deal. When it comes to the Arab-Israeli conflict, instead of using your wealth to confront and to put pressure and to be opposite to anything, today the Saudi Arabia is using its wealth to promote openness, to promote dialogue, to promote a common interest of economies and so on. These common interests are in the amount of $1 trillion, and why not $1.5 trillion, as Trump was joking? And they definitely go into so many different sectors: the technology, the latest and the better, the rare minerals, key to all the technologies and all the new developments, the defense and weapons, also a key sector, and definitely something that was very intriguing is the civil nuclear power cooperation.
As you do say, a lot of deals struck across a lot of areas. And Esther, when I saw Mohammed bin Salman and Donald Trump yesterday, they had such a warm, friendly relationship. What do you make of the visit to the White House by the Saudi Crown Prince?
I think observers will see the level of camaraderie that Trump had with MBS, particularly when he walks out of the car that brought him to the White House, where you had kind of all the pomp and circumstance of the drums and, you know, the whole welcome party. But when Donald Trump met him, he was very chatty, even talking over these drums and all the commotion going around him. And you could see they had quite a very warm relationship. And that's not something that just happens when you have a sort of foreign leader visit once a year or at the start of a president's term. This is, you know, a sustained relationship that's been going on for almost a decade now. And you can tell in the way that Donald Trump relates to MBS. I could actually go as far as say this is probably the warmest relationship that I've seen Donald Trump have with any world leader, maybe perhaps with the exception of Shinzo Abe of Japan. And I think this is really coming across in just the nature of this visit of MBS, you know, getting all these business leaders together. If you had to think of a way to really inculcate a country's business elite into that of Saudi Arabia and kind of help shape their goals, particularly for 2030. I can't think of a better way than to get the CEO of NVIDIA, Tesla's Elon Musk, and all these heavy hitters in the room to really talk business with MBS. There's no kind of pretense around it or what you would see from the royal family of this kind of soft power fluffing around the edges. It's very much we're in the room, let's make things happen. And I think it's a very straightforward approach that certainly Donald Trump has and he appreciates given his business background. So I think these are two men that have achieved a lot in their lives, clearly, and they have a mutual understanding in a way that many world leaders, I think, struggle to really get with Donald Trump. He's very straightforward, very honest, very simple, and I think that's something that MBS appreciates because they always know where each other stands. I think there's also something very clever happening here with the investment summit, which is that, you know, obviously Donald Trump is only in office for 4 years, and moving forward, any country would want to know, you know, is this a kind of warm relationship that's going to endure and sustain, or is it just happening because, you know, Donald Trump is quite friendly to the country? And so by inculcating himself with the business elite in America, it's kind of shoring up Saudi Arabia's investment and interest and relationship with these business elites in America that's kind of outside of politics, because politics comes and goes. Sometimes you have a left-wing party, sometimes you have a right-wing party, but particularly for the vision that MBS has for Saudi Arabia, I think the best thing to do, and which is clearly what he's doing, is to actually move outside of the politics and talk high level, talk about business and investment and jobs and things that actually sustain a healthy political relationship as well as a business relationship. I mean, you know, they've signed weapons deals worth billions of dollars. And, you know, this is something that's going to clearly be a sustained relationship for the next 10 years outside of whatever sort of foreign policy problems or skirmishes that may appear, which I highly doubt would anyway. But moving forward, this is clearly going to be a sustained relationship between Saudi Arabia and the US that you didn't actually see with Biden. And it's been quite a 180-degree turn from the US in quite a positive direction.
Dr. Elie, thoughts on what Esther said there? Yes, a very different relationship with Donald Trump that we're seeing MBS have compared to the Biden administration. And also that thinking along the lines is, has Donald Trump created a network for Saudi Arabia to now have a personal relationship with all these big hitters when it comes to AI, when it comes to rare earth minerals?
Well, going back to the Biden administration, we remember Biden saying Saudi Arabia is a pariah state. I will never visit, I will never shake his hand, and so on. And then we saw Biden in Saudi Arabia fist bumping Mohammed bin Salman at the time, and then asking him as a favor to control the oil prices during that crisis. So that's definitely, Saudi Arabia is an emerging power. But then, of course, the investments that Saudi Arabia needs in order to fulfill the 2030 vision need to be sustainable, need to be trustworthy, and need to be away from different political instability, if I may say. But also we can see some key important political messages that also the US is gaining from that. For example, through the deal of the F-35s to Saudi Arabia, which did not happen to any other country in the region, or even not any of the non-NATO allies. Now it's happening with Saudi Arabia. This is a clear message to Turkey. This is a clear message to Israel that you are not only the strong allies in the region. On the rare minerals, that's definitely a clear message to China. You cannot keep on monopolizing these rare minerals. With Saudi Arabia, we can invest, we can work with African countries, we can actually extract these things. So definitely extremely mutual benefit from all these deals. And again, the two countries are establishing a strong strategic relationship for at least a decade ahead.
Very interesting points, Dr. Elie. But Esther, let's pick up on something that Dr. Elie spoke to us about there, and that was that F-35 sale of the jets. And we know that Saudi Arabia apparently has ordered 48 of them. And then Donald Trump designating Saudi Arabia as a non-NATO ally. And they've really interesting. Do you think this is a hugely significant moment?
I think so. I think Donald Trump is making it very clear that Saudi Arabia was and continues to be, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, an important security ally for the United States and vice versa in the region. We heard from the CEOs of one of the weapons companies that's involved in a massive deal with Saudi Arabia, that this is going to make logistics. So in terms of U.S. security partners operating within Saudi Arabia, it's going to make those kind of logistics much smoother and a lot easier. And this is really signaling Saudi Arabia's sort of stance as a primary security ally for the United States, almost on par with the likes of Turkey, which is a NATO ally. And so it's kind of shoring up the U.S.'s view of Saudi Arabia as a security ally in the region, particularly against the backdrop of this war in Gaza and this sort of lasting peace deal that many allies in the region are hoping to secure for Gaza, to try and stabilize and normalize relations in the region, particularly with Israel, and kind of just move on from the last 2 years of horror. And again, this is one of those things that, once done, is not something that can be easily overturned by the upcoming administration. It's clearly a signal that moving forward, this is the stance that America has taken with Saudi Arabia. And look, there are about 20 other non-NATO allies. But I do think that it is significant that Donald Trump chose this moment to announce that they consider Saudi Arabia a non-NATO ally. And I think it gives the MBS administration a bit more security in that America is definitely in it for the long haul. And it's not going to be a sort of a wishy-washy situation with Biden, who only basically picked up the phone to call MBS when he needed him to manipulate oil prices to help with his local re-election efforts. So there's a real sort of putting your money where your mouth is, and real tangible effort to shore up this security alliance with Saudi Arabia, alongside all the other sort of economic ties as well, with nuclear technology, which is huge as well, which is another thing that Saudi Arabia is investing quite heavily in, and all these business magnates really looking to Saudi Arabia as a serious investment partner moving forward. And I think the contrast is quite interesting, actually, because I think it was just back in 2018 when MBS was over in California, and he was moving with the likes of George Clooney and all the kind of movers and shakers in Hollywood and the business elites. And he was saying at the time, invest in Saudi Arabia. And at the time, that kind of didn't really pick up traction in the way that he would have wanted. They were still a bit unsure. And in the space of about 7 years, look at this massive transformation. No other country has received this kind of welcome, where even the likes of Elon Musk, who famously fell out with Donald Trump, is happy to attend a dinner at the White House to take seriously, the prospect of Saudi Arabia becoming a serious investment partner. So, what a difference a few years has made.
Dr. Elie.
Just a quick comment maybe about the non-NATO allies. It started, of course, with the establishment of NATO, with very key members like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and so on. And then it was really distributed a bit further than that. Actually, we have Morocco, Tunisia, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait. All of these are non-ally key members. But this is not what makes it special. What makes it special is, as Esther said, it's coming in this context. It's coming with this package. And this is what's making this announcement really a historic one.
And also, I found it quite interesting today at the investment forum, MBS and Donald Trump all gave a speech, and Donald Trump has joked with Mohammed bin Salman, can you make it $1.5 trillion? And I think Donald Trump is always trying to get a bigger bounce of money. And he is saying that he's doing it because it will create jobs in the US. Is this very beneficial for America itself, Dr. Elie?
Definitely, it's beneficial, as we said, for both countries. Definitely Saudi Arabia, and maybe the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in the US here is playing a key role, Princess Rima bin Bandar. But also I think they understand what are key features that Trump would like to hear. So they are definitely responding to that, the grandeur, the amounts, the big declarations, all is there. But definitely we are speaking about deals that's going to take years and years to materialize, and to have a real effect on the economy of either countries. It's going to be at least 5-6 years. Trump will be out of the White House by then. But again, it comes as a package.
And I want to talk to you, Esther, about a selfie that was taken last night at this glamorous dinner that Donald Trump held in the White House. And Cristiano Ronaldo was in the selfie. Elon Musk was also in the selfie. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo, I spoke to a guest a little bit earlier on my first show who said he's basically Saudi soft power now. I don't know what you think, Esther.
I think absolutely. I think he's almost an honorary Saudi citizen. And you can tell his real deep love for the country. I watched his interview with Piers Morgan, and he really couldn't have been more kind of effusive in his love for Saudi Arabia, and he feels like the country has adopted him. But this kind of reminds me of that Oscar picture,
yes,
if you remember, with Ellen DeGeneres. I think it was almost a decade ago now, with Lupita Nyong'o and her brother, and that sort of I think it was the Oscars where she won for Best Actress for 12 Years a Slave. But it kind of has that sort of cultural element almost. It looks like one of those cultural moments to see Elon Musk, who's usually very awkward in a selfie like that. I mean, I was really, to be honest, of that dinner, I was more enamored with the First Lady's dress, her Elie Saab, beautiful olive green dress. I even loved what Gio Rodriguez was wearing, who's Cristiano Ronaldo's fiance and mother of his children. So I was more kind of interested in the fashion of it. But again, this is one of those cultural moments. But it's really interesting because, again, you've not seen President Trump do this for any other world leader. I can't really remember, like I said, any other time in this administration, and certainly the last one, his last administration, where he's been this friendly with world leaders, except maybe with the exception of Shinzo Abe. And I think that probably is quite indicative of where MBS is in his opinion and how highly he ranks him.
In total amount of the money that the people in the selfie has, this is quite impressive.
Yeah, definitely. I must admit.
And it goes far beyond Cooper's selfie.
But I must say something. I actually thought Elon Musk didn't look as awkward as he normally does. But thank you so much, Esther and Dr. Elie there. Let's move on to another story now. And US Congress have agreed to order the US Justice Department to release the files on late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It comes after President Trump said he will sign the bill. The records will include documents and flight logs connected to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Esther, it was expected to be passed. Now we're waiting for Trump to sign it. It could possibly be on his desk today, but any idea on when this could all happen?
I think it could happen quite quickly. I would imagine from a strategic perspective, and from what I hear about from the sort of Trump ground staff in this part of the country, they tend to like to bury news within news. So you have all this fanfare around MBS's arrival in Washington, and he may very well sign it within the next 24 to 48 hours, because what will then happen is the DOJ inevitably will redact some of the documents, at least to blur out the names of the individuals accused. Now, there's one argument saying they should put it all out in the public, and the public has the right to know everything. But on the other hand, you you have the issue of if these individuals are just being accused and haven't had their day in court to defend themselves, is it really fair, knowing how the court of public opinion functions, to put their name out in the public domain next to the names of these girls that have been testifying to the horrific abuse that they experienced under the world's most infamous sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein? And now I'm sure Donald Trump didn't think that in his first year in office he would have the ghost of a dead pedophile marring his term, especially with all the accomplishments he's been touting, like border control, like tariffs, like trying to get the economy back on track, like trying to reduce inflation and all of that. But this is one of those things that's really hit in a negative way his MAGA base, who are deeply religious and who'd feel quite strongly about this Epstein mess being put out in the light. You also have to remember that for the longest time, Donald Trump campaigned as the anti-establishment candidate. He said he was going to drain the swamp. It doesn't really get more swamp-like than the creatures that found themselves on Epstein's plains and islands multiple times doing, if these girls are to be believed, horrific things to young women. So I do think these files will be released, and I don't think they're going to be the sensationalist hype that everyone is expecting. I do think Donald Trump made a mistake not releasing it in the first place, because I think he's created all this hype around it. He's made people question whether he's in it, and from what I understand from insiders in the administration, his actual mention in the Epstein files is extremely minimal. This is someone who banned Jeffrey Epstein from Mar-a-Lago, so it's quite a stretch to say that they were friends. If anyone is to be concerned, it's more likely the likes of Bill Clinton, who seem to have, from what we've been seeing, more established relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So again, this is no smoking gun, and I don't think it's going to be as sensationalist as people are expecting.
Dr. Elie, you have a different view. You believe that everyone should be named and we should have full transparency when the Epstein files are released.
I do, actually. I think the public has the right to know all the names that were there. Again, we're not accusing anyone. We're not putting anyone on trial. Of course, the public opinion might give and take with that, might play with it. There's always the judgment of public opinion. But in fact, every victim has the right to know all the names. Every public opinion has the right to know all the names without necessarily saying that everyone who was there is a criminal. It's nothing like that, but it is out of transparency, out of the right to information for the American public. Eventually, it's a huge thing that I think too much reduction will simply create more chaos than actual answers.
And more conspiracy.
And more conspiracy theories, definitely.
But then I guess some people would argue it's trial by media, and like Esther said, you know, everybody should be able to have their day in court or have their right to, you know, prove their innocence and not be guilty by association. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about the MAGA base at the moment, because Esther mentioned there it's deeply religious, and I really feel like the Epstein files has been this rare occasion where Trump has conceded to his MAGA base, and we've seen the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was such a staunch supporter of Donald Trump, break ranks.
Well, again, definitely I think there was a lot of pressure with many Republican congressmen and women who decided to go the other way and to really pressure for the releasing of the files. I think if we try to look and understand what is the MAGA made out of, we could say that it is maybe three key groups. The first group is definitely the Christian conservatives that were motivated mainly by anti-wokeism and all that push in the US to revoke what's happening and having that in government policies and so on. The second group is anti-establishment. Mm-hmm. And again, with all these names are there who are part of the establishment, it was perceived that if Trump was protecting this establishment and reassociating himself to it once again, which again made them very angry. The third group, which I think also is key to Trump's MAGA constituency, is the traditional Republicans, the ever-Trumpers, as Esther told me they are called, you know, the corporations, the tobacco companies, the weapon companies, and so on. And these definitely would have preferred not to have a big chaos on their hand, neither for the economy, neither for the public image, and so on. But I guess the group that was more in size and more influential and was able to attract several of the key Republican members was successful in this time. And again, For me, it's a democratic principle where actually the people will dictate on the leader a few things and not only the other way around.
Esther, what I find interesting is Trump's approval rating has fallen to 38% in the latest polling that we've had come through by Reuters and Ipsos. This is the lowest since his return to power. And actually, Americans are unhappy with his handling of the investigation into the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and also how he's handled the high cost of living. But this just shows, like Dr. Elie said, this really cuts through to the public and the people who voted for Donald Trump.
Absolutely. And I think, to quote Bill Clinton, it's the economy. Because that's what it boils down to. I mean, of course, the whole "I will release the Epstein files," which he campaigned on for months, has kind of stuck in people's minds because it's extremely an extremely sour pill to swallow. That's you being the anti-establishment candidate, having seen how someone like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were able to operate with such impunity and abuse all these young girls, having claimed to stand up to that and to drain the swamp, suddenly turning around and saying, "Oh, there's nothing to see here." It's really just extremely uncomfortable to accept. But even more than that is really the economy. And I think that's one thing that he said, the economy is going to be better under him. Many people are taking the gamble that the economy will be in a much better state under the care of a Donald Trump administration than Kamala Harris. And yet we're yet to see that, we're yet to see whether these tariffs that he's imposed, which is basically like a global rent-seeking operation, will actually have any tangible impact on people's bills, energy bills, housing, which is actually the #1 concern of many people, many voters in America, and was one of the reasons behind Zohra Mamdani's victory in New York. And the price of grocery bills and inflation and all of these things, people are yet to see Trump actually get a handle on that. And if you remember from sort of Obama's second election that he narrowly won, it was the main concern for voters there. People kept saying, it took him 4 years to bring down inflation. I don't think people are going to give Donald Trump a 4-year grace. The midterms are next year. They're a year away. And we really have the next 6 months to see an actual fall in bills and a really improvement in people's living standards, or else Donald Trump's kind of triatic win is going to be toast. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you talk a big game. He's flirting with the idea of sending every American a $2,000 stimulus check, which is kind of like a thank you for having faith in me. Look at all the money that I've got from these tariffs. But again, that's not really going to be the kind of measure that you expect to bring down inflation, just handing people money. You have to grow the economy, you have to bring opportunities back, and you have to bring down energy bills. So Trump has basically a 6 to 8 month window to really get to grips with that. I think that Jeffrey Epstein story will go away. I'm sure there will be some fringe pundits online, like the likes of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, that will manage to cook up any conspiracy theory that comes into their heads. But for people that are really concerned with day-to-day lives, it's mainly the economy that they care about.
And you know what? Donald Trump, when he came in with his tariffs, just a quick thought, many analysts did say it will take time for that money to trickle back into the economy as you make deals with countries and you get that over the line. So it's, as everyone said originally, Dr. Elie, it's going to take years. Exactly.
I think to have the full cycle, to have the feel of the effect. And again, maybe the prices would not decrease, but the income of American in general will increase with all the investments and so on. So it's a tricky game. It's a major change that has not been done for decades and decades again. It was way overdue, and Trump has taken the chance of doing it. Will it blow in his face with the midterm elections? Maybe. We're still yet to see.
Thank you so much for your thoughts there. Let's move on to another story. Now, a convicted murderer who's serving a life sentence in Australia has decided to challenge a ban on prisoners consuming Vegemite. The savoury spread has become a polarising national symbol for the country. Andre Makechi argues the ban on prisoners having it behind bars in the state of Victoria denies him the right to enjoy his culture as an Australian. Okay, Dr. Elie, before we get into this whole story, your family are in Australia. Explain to us what Vegemite is and why it's such a cultural icon all the way down under.
Well, First, it's a kind of a paste that is made out of yeast, some vegetable extract, and simply some salt and some spices. It is definitely spreadable. The best way of eating it is over a toast with a bit of butter, and that's it. It's practically part of the daily breakfast of so many Australians. And as statistics show, up to 80% of Australian households do have it in their home. The point in it is, I think, what I discovered today actually was that it is not that old in the history of Australia. But then all of Australia is not that old.
Not that.
It has been invented in 1923. And then the company, due to the success and the death of the founder and so on, was bought by Kraft for so many years. And then in 2017, we declared victory by bringing it back to Australia with an Australian company regaining it. It's simply part of the lifestyle. It's simply part of the culture. However, you do have the tendency of either loving it or hating it, and very few people are in between. I am, unfortunately, on the side of those haters.
Dr. Elie,
I don't like Vegemite.
I absolutely love Vegemite. I'm actually on the side of the lovers of Vegemite. But Esther, this story is actually, let's get to the nitty-gritty of it. Right now, we have a prisoner in jail serving a sentence, trying to sue because he wants Vegemite. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but can it really be a cultural right?
When you put it this way, Leigh-Ann, come on.
No, but we have. But that's.
I think I will do you one further. He is a criminal serving a sentence for murder, talking about his human right to Vegemite, which is the greatest irony because he apparently didn't think much of the person he murders human rights or right to life. But just parking that aside, I think as comical as this is, to sue the government for the right to eat Vegemite, which again, I think they really need to consider what they spend money on in terms of legal aid, because this is absolutely ridiculous. This lawsuit has cost a lot of money working its way up through the courts. The reason why the state of Victoria has banned Vegemite in its prisons is there are two reasons. One, it's because it contains yeast, and there's a concern that inmates may use it to brew alcohol, which is obviously a substance that can be abused, especially in the context of a prison. The prison is not the place to be getting inebriated. It's a place for punishment and rehabilitation, not a place to have a sort of booze party. And the second point is inmates that are carrying illegal drugs, like marijuana, for example, use Vegemite to mask the scent of these drugs. And apparently it affects the drug sniffer dogs that are routinely deployed in these prisons to sniff out any drugs or contraband in the area. So there are actual real concerns. And they mainly due, obviously, they're mainly due to the fact that prison has to be a prison. It has to be a place of punishment and rehabilitation, but also for the safety of the staff, the prison wardens, who will find it harder to control a prison population that are under the influence of drugs like alcohol or illegal drugs. So as amusing as this is, I mean, you hear of cases like this all the time. In Norway, for example, in Norwegian prisons, internet is actually a human right. So you have one of the most heinous mass murderers, Anders Breivik, who's effectively serving a life sentence, even though the Norwegian penal system is a bit more complicated. He has access to a PS5 and a game and TV and the internet because apparently it's his human right to sit there and wallow in his heinous crimes. That's not really the same. I mean, we're going to see the limits of that phrase, human rights, in the Australian penal system, but it doesn't quite work out the same way there.
Dr. Elie,
Strongly disagree.
You strongly disagree. I strongly agree.
Yeah.
I just don't think that somebody has the right to use all this money, all this legal aid for a crime like murder to sue the system.
See, I agree on this. I definitely agree that, as Esther said, we have seen so much abuse of prisons, of legal systems, of legal aid, of public funds. I agree with all of that. I don't agree with two main things that Esther mentioned. I do believe strongly that even a murderer, even the worst murderer, still has human rights. And nobody's allowed to take away his human rights. And the second most important thing is that prisons are a place for rehabilitation. And we cannot simply give up on any individual because, again, every individual is the result of his society, his bringing up.
But he's serving a life sentence. Is there any point trying to rehabilitate someone who's going to die in prison? He's serving a life sentence for a crime that in other countries, in places like Singapore and Japan, he may very well have been given the death penalty.
Well, I am
and I think
strongly
human rights is all well and good, but human rights are inalienable. So the right to life and the pursuit of happiness and property, that does not include making taxpayers pay for your love of Vegemite. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Agreed on the spending taxpayers' money. Not agreed on death penalty. I'm strongly against death penalty. But then again, the issue of Vegemite could have been better managed, as simple as that. The management of the prison could take the necessary measures, either to avoid any drugs or importing the Vegemites itself or whatever other measures. It is there to manage the prisons in the best way possible with the safest thing possible for all the people who are caring for these people. But again, for me, even if the person has done the worst crimes, he still needs to enjoy his basic human rights, his right to freedom of religion and the practice of that religion in prison, his choice of food to a certain extent, definitely within the norms of the prison. He is allowed to, again, have all his basic rights of health, of learning, of all of that. I'm all for this, to make the prison definitely a rehabilitation, even if he is on death row. The exploitation was definitely suing the government for Vegemite is nonsense. It's taking it way too far, but does not make me rethink or question the fact that every inmate, no matter how severe his crime is, should enjoy all his human rights within the proper understanding of what human rights are.
And I think that lively debate between you and Esther just highlights why the story has made headlines all over the world, because very many people feel very strongly about the human rights that people doing life sentences for murder actually have in prisons. And I think both of you highlighted that. So thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Now, it's that time on the show where Dr. Elie and Esther have chosen two of their quirkiest stories of the day. And Dr. Elie, let's start with yours, because yours is about a tried and tested car stunt that went so terribly wrong. Tell us more.
Well, let's remember together, for those of us who do remember, in 2018, Land Rover marked its launch of the new Range Rover Sports with a challenge of climbing these specific stairs in Tiananmen Mountain. And the exploration was amazing, and the endeavor was achieved in 22 minutes. It was the best possible ad for the Range Rover. Now we are in the age of Chinese cars, and we have seen Chinese cars copy all kind of successful European cars, not only in the model, but also in the design, in the engineering, in everything. And here we have Chery, the Chinese car maker, who has created a copycat of the actual Range Rover, and they decided to do the same challenge. Unfortunately, Chinese design and Chinese engineering is not there yet, and that attempt have failed. And we saw the car stop halfway through, even less than halfway through, and then roll back and actually destroy part of these historical stairs in Tiananmen Mountain in China, as we can see in the video.
Do you know what this reminds me of? I don't know if you remember that time that Elon Musk was showing off the Cybertruck before it actually became the Cybertruck we know. And it said, when he introduced it, it has indispensable windows, nothing can break it, it's bulletproof, I'll prove it to you. And he threw a rock at it and the whole window shattered. And I remember it was like the moment that no one knew what to do. So it's when car companies go really badly wrong, how do you get back to where you should be?
Well, the Cybertruck eventually made it. Chinese cars, not yet, at least in my opinion, not for me yet.
Yeah. And Esther, I want to talk to yours, because this stunt that went wrong almost looked like a prank, but it wasn't a prank. And yours is about the rise of AI prank videos.
Yes, which is something I'm embarrassed to admit I could spend hours watching. It's people basically manipulating images of all sorts of things, but mainly people's pets. So people that have been charged with the care of their friends or family's pets for a few days or a week or whatever, and they will take a picture of the pet, like a guinea pig, for example, and ask an AI program to make it look fat, like a fat version of that pet. And then send that to their friend or family and say, oh, Schnookums is doing really well. He misses you. And then you have this horror of the people responding saying, why is my animal twice the size? What have you been feeding it? And it's just kind of this back and forth interaction because that's clearly their pet, just massive. And the images are so realistic. Almost every time this sort of prank is done, it's been successful. But you've also seen more malicious ones, like people sending pictures of like friends in the house when they're not supposed to have anyone in the house, or things like that. So I find it really entertaining. I wish I had pets, or I knew someone with pets to pull that prank on them and send them obese pictures of their cats and dogs.
So is it easy to do that? Have you tried it, Esther?
Yes, it's extremely easy. You just take a picture of the animal, you go into this AI program, just say, make it fat. And it's brilliant. Honestly, it's so convincing. I mean, that guinea pig on the screen right now looks like a potato.
Well, Esther, I have 2 dogs. You're more than welcome to come and look after them when I'm away. And I will let you send me some prank videos of them.
I would feed them so much, because this is the thing, I don't know how to play with animals very well. So my default setting will be just to feed them, and then the risk is you end up having a pet that needs to go on Ozempic. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh
and
my God.
Can you imagine? Well, I must say something. The little puppy I have will eat everything you feed it, and by the time I come back, he'll look exactly like that guinea pig. But thanks so much to our guest today, writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue, and Dr. Elie Hindy, Chairperson of the Department of Security and Strategic Studies at the American University in the Emirates. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on X. Goodbye, and thank you for joining us.